Chapter 4. The Warrior's Analysis. Night had fallen by the time Takeshi regained full consciousness. The pain of his wounds had subsided to a dull throb, thanks to Miyako's skilled ministrations. He lay on a thin futon in her healing room, surrounded by the comforting scent of medicinal herbs and burning cedar. Outside, he could hear the occasional footsteps of village patrols, farmers transformed into sentries by necessity. "You should be resting," Miyako's voice came from the shadows as she noticed his open eyes. "I have rested enough," Takeshi replied, though his body protested as he pushed himself into a sitting position. "How long was I unconscious?" "Several hours. The sun has set." The old healer moved to his side, her hands gently checking the bandages that wrapped his torso and arms. "Your wounds are clean, but deep. The fever has broken, at least." Takeshi nodded his thanks, then carefully tested each limb, assessing his remaining combat effectiveness. His left arm responded sluggishly, a deep cut having severed minor muscles. His right, his sword arm, remained functional, though painful when fully extended. Most concerning was the wound along his right side, where one of the alien's blades had slipped past his guard and scored a long gash across his ribs. "You fought well," Miyako observed, mixing a bitter-smelling paste in a small bowl. "Few men could have stood against such a creature and survived, much less wounded it." "It wasn't enough," Takeshi said grimly. "I barely survived one, and there are many more. Which is why you must analyze what you learned, rather than bemoaning what you did not accomplish." Miyako applied the paste to his side wound with practiced efficiency. "The warrior who fights only with his sword is already defeated. The warrior who fights with his mind may prevail against superior strength." Takeshi raised an eyebrow. "You speak like one who has studied the way of the sword." A faint smile crossed the old woman's face. "I was once married to a sword master. Before the wars took him, I learned much of strategy and combat, though I wielded herbs rather than blades." The door slid open, admitting Toru's substantial frame. The blacksmith carried a tray with steaming rice, grilled fish, and a pot of strong tea. "Our patient is awake, I see," Toru observed, setting the food beside Takeshi. "Good. A warrior needs sustenance after battle." Takeshi accepted the meal with gratitude, suddenly aware of his hunger. As he ate, Toru produced a folded cloth from his belt and laid it on the tatami. Unwrapping it revealed fragments of alien material, small pieces of the armor that had broken off during combat. "I collected these after your duel," the blacksmith explained. "Fascinating material, like shell, yet harder than any tortoise carapace, with the resilience of tempered steel." Takeshi set aside his food to examine the fragments. One piece was clearly from the outer plating, smooth, slightly iridescent, and remarkably lightweight. Another appeared to be from a joint section, more flexible, with a texture reminiscent of hardened leather, but with the strength of metal. "Have you tested blade effectiveness?" Takeshi asked, running his finger along the edge of one fragment. Toru nodded. "Against every blade in my collection. Only the finest steel makes any impression, and even then, only at the joints and seams." He picked up one of the larger fragments. "Strike directly against these plates, and even a Masamune blade would likely chip." "Then we don't strike the plates," Takeshi concluded. "We target the gaps, the joints, here and here." He indicated the areas on his own body where he'd observed vulnerabilities in the alien anatomy. The door slid open again, admitting Goro. The headman looked exhausted, his usual dignified bearing strained by the day's events. "The messengers have been sent to neighboring villages," he reported, "though I doubt help will arrive quickly, if at all." We must prepare with what we have then, Takeshi said. He turned to Toru. The weapons you showed me, are they ready for use? All sharpened and prepared, the blacksmith confirmed. I've distributed the spears and naginata to those with the reach and strength to wield them effectively. The bows are with our best hunters. The swords... He hesitated. I've kept those aside for proper warriors. Should any answer our call? Takeshi nodded approval. And the villagers? How do they fare? Frightened but resolute, Goro answered. Your victory, temporary though it may be, has given them courage. They train even now, despite the darkness. Good. Bring me paper and ink. I need to record what I've learned of our enemy's fighting style. As Goro left to fulfill this request, Takeshi turned back to the armor fragments, his mind working through combat sequences. The four-armed technique follows distinct patterns, he said, half to himself. The upper arms initiate, creating openings that the lower arms exploit. But there's a rhythm to it, almost like music with four separate melody lines converging and diverging. Miyako nodded. The scrolls speak of this. They say the star visitors fight like flowing water, continuous motion without pause. Yes, but water has patterns, currents, predictable flows if one studies it long enough. Takeshi mimed a blocking motion with his good arm. The key is to disrupt their rhythm. Their strength and reach exceed ours, but their coordination between upper and lower arms isn't perfect. There's a fractional delay, small enough that most wouldn't notice, but in combat that fraction is the difference between life and death. Goro returned with writing materials, setting them beside Takeshi's futon. With careful brush strokes, Takeshi began to diagram the alien fighting style, recording the patterns he'd observed during combat. He drew stick figures with four arms, annotating specific sequences and countermeasures. The joints in their arms bend differently than human joints, he explained as the others watched. More flexibility in certain directions, less in others. Their upper right arm is dominant for most, creating a slight asymmetry in their attacks that can be exploited. Toru studied the diagrams with professional interest. And their stance? How is their balance maintained with such a different body structure? Their center of gravity sits higher than ours, Takeshi demonstrated, adjusting his own posture. They rely on forward momentum in their attacks. If forced to change direction suddenly, they become momentarily unstable. As the night deepened, Takeshi continued his analysis, moving from theoretical discussion to practical application. Despite his injuries, he demonstrated key defensive positions, showing how traditional samurai techniques could be adapted to counter the four-armed style. Their reach advantage means maintaining distance is crucial, he explained. Classic iaijutsu is effective. The draw cut from the scabbard provides both surprise and critical first strike potential. Miyako watched these demonstrations with a healer's concern. You should not exert yourself so soon after treatment, she admonished, though her tone suggested she knew her advice would be ignored. There is no time for lengthy recovery, Takeshi replied, wincing slightly as he resheathed a borrowed blade. The aliens will not wait for me to heal completely. A commotion outside interrupted their session. One of the village sentries appeared at the door, breathless with excitement. "Ronin!" he announced. 3 samurai approaching from the south road." Takeshi exchanged glances with Toru. The messengers couldn't have reached the next village yet, let alone returned with help. News travels faster than formal messengers sometimes, Goro suggested, especially news of star demons. Takeshi pushed himself to his feet, ignoring Miyako's protests. I should greet them. Warriors respond better to one of their own kind. With Toru's assistance, Takeshi made his way outside. The village was transformed from the previous day. Makeshift barricades reinforced the spaces between buildings, while sharpened stakes had been positioned to create defensive choke points. Villagers moved with purpose rather than panic, carrying supplies or maintaining vigilant watch positions. At the southern approach, 3 figures stood illuminated by torchlight. Even at a distance, Takeshi recognized them as masterless samurai like himself. Their weathered travel clothes, practical armor, and the way they carried their swords spoke of men accustomed to the Ronin's harsh existence. The lead figure stepped forward as Takeshi approached. He was a man in his early 50s, his face deeply scarred along the right side, armor well-maintained but showing signs of heavy use. His companion to the right was younger, perhaps 40, with the careful movements of one constantly assessing threats. The third was barely more than a youth, his stance casual yet alert, a cocky grin visible even in the poor light. "I am Hiroshi," the scarred Ronin introduced himself with a formal bow. "My companions are Masaru and Kenji. We heard rumors of strange warriors from the stars offering honorable combat and worthy opponents. Such curiosities are rare in these troubled times." Takeshi returned the bow, careful not to reveal the pain the movement caused. "I am Takeshi. The rumors are true. Hunters from beyond the stars have established a camp in the forest north of here. They seek combat according to some alien code of honor." The youngest Ronin, Kenji, stepped forward with an eager expression. "Is it true they have 4 arms? How do they fight? Can they be killed?" "All true," Takeshi confirmed. "I wounded one in combat earlier today. They can bleed and die, though their strength and reach exceed human capacity." Hiroshi's scarred face remained impassive, but his eyes held the calculating assessment of a veteran. "And why would 3 Ronin risk their lives for a remote village against such opponents?" "For honor," Masaru suggested quietly. "For glory," Kenji added with a grin. "For purpose," Takeshi said simply. "Is that not what all masterless samurai seek?" Hiroshi studied him for a long moment, then nodded. "Show us these star warriors, then. We would see them for ourselves before committing to this strange battle." Dawn found Takeshi leading the 3 newly arrived Ronin to a concealed observation point overlooking the clearing where the alien vessel had landed. His wounds protested the exertion, but he ignored the pain, focusing instead on the opportunity these experienced warriors represented. The alien ship rested in the clearing exactly as before, its surface gleaming dully in the early morning light. Around it, alien warriors performed what appeared to be training exercises, 4 armed combat forms executed with fluid precision. "Kami preserve us," breathed Masaru, his habitually cautious expression tightening further at the sight of the aliens' coordinated movements. Kenji, by contrast, leaned forward eagerly. "Magnificent," he whispered. "Look at that speed." Hiroshi simply observed in silence, his scarred face revealing nothing of his thoughts. "They hunt by code," Takeshi explained in hushed tones. "They set aside their advanced weapons in favor of more primitive ones when engaging opponents. They prefer ritual combat to outright slaughter." "Like samurai," Masaru observed. "Perhaps," Takeshi conceded, "though their understanding of honor may differ from Bushido in ways we cannot yet comprehend." As they watched, 2 aliens engaged in a sparring match at the edge of the clearing. The 4-armed combat style was displayed in its full complexity, a whirlwind of coordinated strikes from multiple angles simultaneously. Even having faced it directly, Takeshi found the technique both beautiful and terrifying to behold. "How can any human counter such an attack pattern?" Masaru wondered aloud, his face pale beneath his weathered tan. "By understanding it," Takeshi replied, "by finding the rhythm within the chaos." Kenji snorted softly. "Poetic, but I prefer practical solutions. Where are they vulnerable? What kills them?" Their joints, where the natural armor segments meet. Their neck, though it's well protected. And they have organs here. Takeshi indicated a spot on his own torso that seem vital based on how carefully they defend that area. Hiroshi finally spoke, his voice low and measured. You've studied them well in a short time. Necessity is a demanding teacher, Takeshi responded. They continued their observation until the aliens completed their exercises and returned to their vessel. As the Ronin made their way back toward the village, Hiroshi fell into step beside Takeshi. You're injured worse than you let on, the older warrior observed quietly. Takeshi didn't bother denying it. The village needs leadership, confidence. And you provide this out of the goodness of your heart? Hiroshi's tone wasn't accusatory, merely curious. Most Ronin would have moved on at the first sign of such danger. I gave my word to protect them, Takeshi said simply. Ah, honor. Hiroshi's scarred face twisted in what might have been a smile. I've found it costs more than it pays, most times. Before Takeshi could respond, they crested a rise that provided a view of the village below. The sight stopped them all momentarily. In the clear morning light, the transformation was even more evident than it had been the previous night. Defensive positions had been reinforced, training continued in designated areas, and the entire settlement operated with the coordinated purpose of a military encampment. Impressive, Hiroshi acknowledged. These farmers have spirit, at least. They fight for their homes and families, Takeshi said, the most powerful motivation of all. Kenji laughed. More powerful than forearms and alien weapons? We shall see. As they descended towards the village, Takeshi felt a strange sense of purpose taking root within him. For years after his lord's death, he had wandered without direction, taking odd jobs protecting merchants or villages, but never committing himself fully to any cause. Now, facing an enemy from beyond the stars, he found himself more focused, more present than he had been since witnessing his master's beheading. Perhaps this was what he had been waiting for, a challenge worthy of complete commitment, a purpose transcending the chaos of this warring period. Not redemption for his failure to save his lord, but a new path forged through the most unlikely of circumstances. Throughout the day, Takeshi transformed Miyako's healing room into a strategic command center. Maps of the surrounding area were spread across the floor, weighted down with stones and fragments of alien armor. Diagrams of alien fighting techniques were pinned to the walls alongside sketches of their anatomical vulnerabilities. The 4 Ronin gathered there after midday, each having spent the morning observing the aliens from different vantage points. Their reports painted a clearer picture of the hunters' patterns and protocols. They maintain regular patrols, Masaru reported, indicating routes on the map with precise gestures. Always groups of 3, rotating at set intervals, methodical, disciplined. And they're cataloging local wildlife, added Kenji, his usual levity temporarily set aside for professional assessment. I observed them capturing, examining, and releasing various forest creatures. They seem particularly interested in predator species. Hiroshi nodded. They're assessing the ecosystem, identifying the dominant hunters. It's what I would do when entering unfamiliar territory. They've also begun challenging individual humans they encounter, Takeshi noted grimly. 2 woodcutters from the next village were confronted this morning. One accepted combat and was killed. The other fled and was allowed to escape. Further evidence they prefer worthy opponents to easy prey. If they desired simple slaughter, they have the means, Hiroshi agreed. Their weapons could devastate the entire region. The fact that they choose not to use them speaks to the ritual nature of their hunt. Takeshi unrolled a fresh sheet of paper, beginning to sketch a training regimen. We need to develop counter techniques specific to their four-armed style, focusing on timing, footwork, and joint targeting. And we need more warriors, Masaru added cautiously. 4 Ronin, no matter how skilled, cannot stand against their full hunting party. The messenger should reach the neighboring regions by tomorrow, Takeshi replied. If even a handful of skilled fighters respond, our chances improve significantly. Kenji laughed, the sound incongruously bright in the serious atmosphere. You assume we'll live that long? I saw at least 20 of these creatures at their camp, should they decide to abandon their hunting protocol and attack en masse. They won't, Takeshi stated with certainty. Not unless we give them reason to. They value the challenge, the test of skill against worthy opponents. To abandon that would be to abandon their purpose here. You seem very confident in your understanding of alien psychology, Hiroshi observed dryly. Takeshi turned to Miyako, who had been listening silently from her position by the medicinal herbs. The scrolls you showed me, are there more details about the previous encounter? How did our ancestors survive the hunt? The old woman nodded slowly. There are passages I have not yet translated. The script is archaic, the ink faded. But I shall try. She moved to a wooden chest in the corner, withdrawing additional scrolls with careful hands. As she worked on the ancient texts, Takeshi returned to his analysis of alien combat patterns. Their four-armed technique follows predictable sequences despite its complexity. The key is to recognize which sequence is initiating and respond accordingly. He demonstrated with careful movements, showing how certain defensive postures could counter the most common attack patterns he'd observed. Their reach advantage means we must close distance rapidly once we've disrupted their rhythm. Like this, he executed a swift stepping cut, then winced as the motion pulled at his wounds. You need rest, Miyako admonished without looking up from her scrolls. A wounded warrior is of no use to anyone. I'll rest when, Takeshi began, but was interrupted by Toru's arrival. The blacksmith entered carrying a sword rack containing several katanas. I've finished tempering these blades against samples of the alien armor, he announced. The results are mixed. He laid the rack on the floor, indicating the first blade. Standard steel, even of good quality, dulls quickly against their armor. But my highest carbon blades, especially those with a hard edge and softer spine, maintain effectiveness longer. Takeshi lifted one of the katanas, testing its balance and edge. This will cut through the joint sections? It should, yes. Toru picked up another blade, shorter, with more curve. I've also adapted several tanto designs specifically for close-quarter fighting. Once inside their guard, these should be able to penetrate the less protected areas. Kenji selected one of the shorter blades, whistling appreciatively at its keen edge. Fine work, blacksmith. Almost worthy of Kyoto's master craftsman. Toru accepted the compliment with a modest nod. I've brought my best pieces for you four. The village defenders will use spears and polearms, better for maintaining distance against their reach advantage. Hiroshi examined each weapon methodically, finally selecting a katana with slightly less curve than traditional designs. This one, he decided. Well balanced for a direct thrust as well as cutting. As the Ronin familiarized themselves with their selected weapons, Miyako made a sound of discovery. Here, she said, indicating a passage in one of the ancient scrolls. It speaks of the previous encounter's resolution. The warriors gathered around as she translated the faded text. The Star Hunters sought worthy combat through individual challenges. Many fell to their superior strength, but those who demonstrated the inner spirit of true warriors earned their respect. After 7 days of ritual combat, they departed, taking only trophies from the honorably defeated. 7 days, Masaru repeated, his expression grim. Can we last so long against them? "We must," Takeshi said simply, "and we must prove ourselves worthy opponents in their eyes." Hiroshi's scarred face darkened. "So we're to perform for these creatures? Dance to their tune and hope they find us amusing enough to spare?" "Not perform," Takeshi corrected. "Fight, with everything we have, according to our own code. Bushido demands no less, regardless of whether our opponent has 2 arms or 4, comes from across the sea or across the stars." The scarred Ronin held Takeshi's gaze for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "Fair enough. Though I've found Bushido's absolutes rarely survive contact with reality's complexities." Before Takeshi could respond, a village sentry appeared at the door. "The aliens approach, 3 of them from the north." The Ronin exchanged glances, then rose as one, securing weapons and moving with practiced efficiency despite their diverse backgrounds and styles. As they stepped outside into the afternoon sunlight, Takeshi felt a strange sense of rightness despite the dire circumstances. Here, at the end of all things familiar, 4 masterless samurai had found common purpose against an enemy none could have imagined. Villagers parted before them, expressions mixing fear with desperate hope as the 4 warriors advanced toward the northern boundary. There, silhouetted against the forest backdrop, stood 3 alien figures, taller, more elaborately armored than those Takeshi had encountered previously. "They're champions," Takeshi observed quietly. "They've been watching, learning. Now they come to issue formal challenge." "Then let us meet them," Hiroshi replied, his hand resting easily on his sword hilt, "and show these star demons what Earth's warriors are truly capable of." As they approached the waiting aliens, Takeshi felt the weight of 2 civilizations' concepts of honor and combat resting upon the coming exchange. This was more than a fight for survival now. It was a crucible in which humanity's worth as warriors would be tested against standards from beyond the stars. And somehow, he knew that the outcome would echo far beyond this remote mountain village, regardless of who emerged victorious.